Good morning. My name is Dennis Clinton, and today we're going to go over Chapter 5, Analyzing the Incident by Identifying Containers and Predicting Behavior. The lesson goal for this chapter is, after completing this lesson, the student shall be able to identify common containers that house hazard materials and to predict their behavior. There are 9 objectives and 1 skill for this chapter. The first objective is to describe methods of identifying potential outcomes. The next is to explain the role of the general hazard material behavior model in predicting the behavior of the containers. The third is to recognize general container types and their associated behaviors. The fourth is to describe the types of bulk facility storage tanks and their associated hazards. The fifth is to describe the types of cargo tank trucks and their associated hazards. The sixth objective is to describe the types of tank cars and their associated hazards. The next one is to describe the types of intermodal tanks and their associated hazards. The 8th objective is to describe types of bulk transportation containers and their associated hazards. And the last objective is to describe other types of bulk and non-bulk containers and their associated hazards. The only skill for this chapter is to analyze the hazard materials scenario to identify potential hazards. And again, the first objective of this chapter is to describe methods of identifying potential outcomes. And uncontrolled release from a container can expose people, animals, and the environment to many hazards. When first responders collect information about the physical and chemical properties of released hazard materials, they can determine the present hazards, estimate potential harm, and predict how the incident may progress. The same material, physical and chemical properties that create hazards upon release will influence how a container will behave when damaged or ruptured. First responders need to know how to account for these factors when attempting to understand the problem posed by a hazmat incident. The first step in mitigating or solving any hazmat incident is to understand the problem within the framework of the incident priorities, incident management system, and the predetermined procedures. First responders can form an overall plan of action by understanding the problem and its entire component parts. The initial survey should answer the following questions. Where is the incident seen in relation to population and environmental and property exposures? What are the hazard materials involved? What are their classes? What are their quantities? What are their concentrations? And how could they react? How is the material likely to behave? Is it a liquid, solid, or a gas? Is something burning? What kind of container holds the material? What is the condition of the container? How much time has elapsed since the incident began? What resources are available? What personnel, equipment, and extinguishing agents are available? Is there private fire protection or other help available? What hazards does this site present? What effects can the weather have? Are there nearby lakes, ponds, streams, or other bodies of water? Are there overhead wires, underground pipelines, or other utilities? Where are the nearest storm and sewer drains? Is the incident seen inside or outside of a building? And what has already been done? All of the previous described factors and others can affect the incident. The first responder must make reasonable determination as to the amount or level of hazards present and the risk associated when dealing with the incident. You will need to gather this information during the incident scene analysis or size up and then analyze it through a hazard and risk assessment model. To identify endangered areas, personnel must gather and correctly interpret information including the following. The size. Is the endangered area changing or moving? Is it expanding, being blown by wind, or flowing? How wide should the initial isolation zone be? Then the shape. Is the endangered area a square room or a floor of a building? Is it a cone-shaped area downwind? Is it a loading dock? A small stretch of highway with surrounding drainage ditches? The exposures are people, animals, or property in the endangered area. Is the environment in danger of being contaminated or damaged? Are rescues needed? And then there are physical, health, and safety hazards. What potential hazards do the material and its container present? What other hazards are present? And what are the surrounding conditions? If possible, verify all information through contact with emergency response agencies, manufacturers, shippers, or other resources that can confirm handling procedures, product to identify, and appropriate response information. These resources can often assist the first responder in estimating the size of the endangered area. For example, the ERG lists recommended isolation distances and the potential harm posed by the material and its container. The review question for this section is, what are some questions that should be asked to help you identify potential outcomes? To find the answer to this question, look on pages 210 and 211 of the manual for the answers.